Modules, computers, programming, oh my, why it's gotten so complicated today. Let's get started. Before we get started today on this 2011 Subaru from a local dealer, wanted to address some of you guys in the previous video not too long ago was pretty upset that we're not working on domestic cars anymore. I wanted to kind of refresh you guys and make you feel a little bit better that Hoovie will still bring in domestic cars. Eurasian Bob will still bring in domestic cars. There's a few people I still will work on them for, but it's just for the general public. I won't take them in anymore. You will still see them on this channel. Which one's a good one? Which one's a bad one? You'll still be going to see the same thing. Also Honda, Toyota, Nissan, Lexus, Acura, Subaru. We still will work on those for the public, for everyone. I mentioned that in that video as well. Just not Ford, Chevy, Dodge, Buick, Lincoln. Those for the public, we're not going to work on those anymore. It's getting really difficult to have all the scan tool software and all the tools for every freaking car on the road. Kind of having to narrow it down a little bit so that we can kind of have a little bit easier, less stressful environment here in the shop. And also I've always dreamed of an exotic European repair shop, and finally we have gotten to that point. Again, we'll be going to working on the Asian vehicles. You will still see domestic vehicles on these videos. We haven't abandoned you with that. Just if you call and say, hey, I got a Ford or a Chevy, we won't be interested in working on it. Today's video is about how computer modules are getting so complicated that they're really taking down today's newer cars. They're causing serious headaches and issues. I want to show you today how the advent of the late 80s, early 90s, we started getting modules, ECMs, TCMs, control modules, things of that nature, and how it changed over to be security or VIN programmed to the car. And now we have over-the-air connections to your car, wireless connections. It's getting really pretty bad. This car came from a local dealership. It's going to be for sale. It had some issues, some codes. Let me pull up my phone and show you the code. Master cylinder pressure output and also G sensor input. This came from a local dealer who is not a Subaru dealer. And with the scan tools they had, whatever they had available to them, they're just not able to make that go away. They didn't even know what that means. And really, if you just read that, you're like, oh no, parts have failed, something's wrong. Nothing was wrong. It's actually already fixed. After we take a look around this vehicle, I'm going to show you what we did to fix it and how an $80 scan tool from your local parts store will not solve the issues on these vehicles. You're going to have a $3,000 scan tool or more to take care of newer car issues. But before we dive into that and show you some other modules we have from around the shop, let's take a look at this Subaru. So here at the front of this Subaru Outback, it has 198,000 miles. And starting to show that with the headlamps. I'm pretty sure the local dealer can take care of that with a detail service they might have. But it's in really good shape. I really like the color. It's kind of a sea foam green. What would you call it, Mrs. Wizard?
Maybe a light emerald green.
Light emerald, okay. Wheels are nice and shiny. Looking pretty good there too. It does have some minor little scratches here or there, but it's to be expected on a vehicle with this many miles. They're not going to be flawless. And on this side, all the back is equally as clean as we go look down to the other side. Actually very nice. Let's jump under the hood. Here we are with the 2.5 liter flat four, just like Grandpa's Volkswagen Beetle from 1968. It's a flat four. Not a V4, not an inline four, an opposed engine. These are really good engines in these later models. The early ones we know had head gasket problems, but they've pretty much solved that now. But since we're talking about computer programming and things of that nature, here's an ABS module. It controls your analog brake system. You can see it's got a large connector with tons of wires going to it. And here we have our fuse box, which I don't believe this one's computerized, but you would be surprised on newer vehicles. Your simple fuse boxes that you think, oh, it just has fuses and some wires and that's it. On a Chrysler vehicle, it's called the Totally Integrated Power Module, or TIPM, and it is computer programmed. So we like all the technology with vehicles, all the features and all the things that they can do. But with increased features and increased options comes more modules, more computers, and when they fail, more things that need programmed. Let's go over what we did to fix this vehicle. It actually wasn't very difficult, but you had to have a $3,000 scan tool to take care of it. This is my Autel IM608 that we use in the shop. It's Grimes' favorite tool. It can do programming of keys and all kinds of different things. You do not pick these up for $600 or $400. This one was like $3,800, but it is so powerful. It can do Lamborghini, Ferrari, Lexus, Mercedes, BMW. It can do all types of things with all types of makes, all in one tool. Very powerful. So let's show you what we did with this tool to solve their warning lights. They had ABS, brake, and traction control warning lights on all the time. This is the vehicle communication or VCM module. We're going to plug it into our OBD2 port. You can see that it's wireless as far as connecting to the scan tool. It beeped, it's happy, it's connected. We'll just set it on the dash there. We already have it set up to the Subaru and the correct year and everything. But we're going to go to control unit, brake control system, because that was the errors that we had. The vehicle dynamic control ABS system there. And the thing we're going to do is special function check sequence. We can set up the neutral of the steering angle sensor. We can do the gravity sensor reprogram and also the pressure sensor program. Those special procedures there you're not going to find on your $80 scan tool from your local parts store. These are going to go into the system and tell those modules to recalibrate. Very likely someone put a new battery in this thing and it lost its calibrations. That's all that's wrong. Nothing else is wrong on this car. Actually, nothing is wrong with this car. I've already fixed it. But I'm going to show you a simple procedure. However, the tool was so expensive to be even able to do it in the first place. Let's set up the steering angle sensor, which is one of the codes. Set up for neutral steering, stop the vehicle straight ahead. We did that already. Set up for steering angle sensor, neutral latest G sensor 0 point will be started. And it now is completed. Like 3 clicks of 3 buttons. But you'd be surprised how many people are pulling their hair out. They're like, I've got this problem. It's such a simple deal. You have to have one of these. You have to. There's no magic trick, there's no bypass, there's no way around, no workaround. You have to have one of these. Now, I'm not telling you to go out right now and go buy a $3,000 tool to turn off one single light. That's not practical. It doesn't even make sense. The cheaper option is take it to your local shop that has that tool, and you're probably going to pay a couple $100 to reset that. It sure is a lot better than $3,000 for a tool that you probably won't even use that much. It only makes sense to buy something like that if you fix 10 cars a day, every day, all the time. Then you can start making money with that tool. You can't really do much with it if you have 1 or 2 cars and you buy that tool. It really doesn't make sense. Also, any of these newer scan tools have an annual fee to even have the updates and things with all the proper programs. And that costs sometimes $800 or $1,000 every year. So I frequently get emails, hey Car Wizard, I've tried this, I've tried that, I put a new module in, now it's saying no communication. I don't know what happened. Because you have to have that tool to program the new module. Back in the day, in the early 90s, you could go to the junkyard, grab a cruise control module, swap out the good one for the bad one, plug it in, and you're done. I remember those days. Those days are gone. I actually have a cart of parts. I want to show you some different modules and things and how it's hard to tell which one needs to be programmed, which one doesn't. Let's take a look. So here we have an ECM, an engine control computer that controls the entire, really the whole powertrain. Does that need to be programmed? Let me know in the comments, yes or no. Here we have a throttle body that's electronic. There's no cables or anything, it's a plug. Does that need to be programmed? Yes or no? We're playing the game, let me know in the comments. What about this old ignition control module off of a Chevy HEI? Does it need to be programmed? Yes or no? Let me know in the comments. So we're going to go ahead and give you guys the answers to those questions. We're going to go through every part on this cart. And one thing you're going to find is the defining information that's going to give you that answer is the year of car. 2000 or earlier, 1992, 95, 96, pretty much all cars during those years, most of the things are plug and play. The ECM may not be, but most of the other modules and things, it's a very good chance you can plug and play and it'll work. But as you get especially 2005 and newer, we're getting into systems, VIN programming, security programming. You can't just hot swap parts. They won't even talk to each other. So here's the ECM. Yes, it absolutely has to be programmed to your car. It has all the pertinent information specific to that engine, and it needs to have all that correct programming inside of there. Also, it's going to match the VIN number that's programmed to this to every other module on the car. If the first three letters are 1N3, and you put in an ECM out of the junkyard that has 1N7, it's going to say, nope, I refuse to talk. It's going to think it's stolen. It's going to be like, no, I can't do it. So yes, most ECMs have to be programmed. This is an instrument cluster out of a Jaguar. I think it was early 2000s. Again, 2000 earlier, you probably don't have to program it. But as you get into the newer years, absolutely. It's going to check the VIN number. It's going to say, here's my VIN number. What do you got, ECM? What's the VIN number you have on file? And it's going to say, ours don't match. So guess what? We don't talk anymore. We're done. Then you get no communication error, things shut down, and they don't work. Also, one thing that people forget when they'll say, I'll just go grab a cluster out of the junkyard. You need to make sure the odometer matches. It's actually illegal to be swapping odometer numbers. If you have 180,000 miles, you need to make sure you get one around that same amount. You obviously don't want more, but it's lying if you find one that has less. You could get in trouble. This one luckily did not have to be programmed, but it wasn't but a year or two newer of a Jag, and it would have to be programmed. You have to go through the whole sequence to tell the computer, hey, here's a new cluster. Let's pass back and forth the information. Let's get our stuff in line, our ducks in a row, and then it starts working. This is an old screen out of a Mercedes that has like your radio. It's not touch screen. This one did not need to be programmed, but so many of them today do. Especially like a Tesla or a newer Mercedes or a newer Cadillac. If you just take a screen or a module out of another vehicle and just plug it in, it won't even work. So they definitely have to be programmed on the newer vehicles. Remember, we just saw an ABS module in the Subaru. Most of these do have to be programmed. There are instances where you can just remove the electronics and put in your old electronics to this and maybe make it work again. But you remember your XJR, Mrs. Wizard?
I loved that car.
The ABS went out. We bought one out of a salvage yard and plugged it in, and what did it do?
Didn't work.
It didn't even do anything. We took it to a local Jag dealer and had it programmed. Boom. It was happy. That was before we actually had a shop, so that was quite a ways in the past. Now here on level 2, none of these objects have to be programmed. Here we are in the 90s, early 2000. Most of these do not have to be programmed, but one of these does have to be calibrated. So here's the ignition control module out of a late 80s, early 90s Chevy pickup for HEI. Does it need to be programmed? No, it doesn't have to be programmed. You can swap those out. Here is a radio amplifier module out of a Lexus. I think it's a Nagamichi. No, we don't have to program it. Just plugged it in, and the new one worked. This one's dead, obviously. Here is a cruise control module out of a early 90s Chevy truck, or maybe if it was mid-90s. Nope, did not have to be programmed. You can hot swap it, plug it in, and it worked. This is a early 90s Mercedes climate control module. No programming needed. Just got a good used one and plugged it in. And one final one that we had was the throttle body. You cannot just swap them. You don't have to program them really, but they do have to be calibrated. You put a new one on and the computer will say, I do see the throttle body, but I'm not going to allow us to use it yet because I don't know where 0, 10%, 20%, I don't know where that's at anymore. So you have to go through just like we did on this car right here and do the reset procedure, calibration procedure, and then it works again. So I'm not trying to scare you guys, but you do need to be aware of, as we're getting into newer cars, what we just showed you is getting worse and worse and worse. Kind of wanted to show you in the early 90s, mid 90s, even late 90s, you could hot swap modules, you could make them work again. As you got into the 2000s, it got more complicated, but now modules are so sophisticated that the computer used to program them can't just be a standalone computer. It has to tie into a server. Let's say we're at a Toyota dealership. The computer used to program your modules won't even work unless it can talk to Toyota's server, their mainframe computer, to verify all this data. So even if you go buy that expensive dealer scan tool, it still isn't going to work because it needs an account set up with Toyota mainframe. Now that's not going to affect the common car user who's fixing their car on the weekend, a few little things here or there. But I do get emails to say, if I buy the dealer scan tool, will it work? Probably not. They have that locked down pretty tight. Now how does it affect us as the shop owner? Cost. There's car companies out there that say, yes, we'll allow you to log into our computer system and so it will allow you to program modules, but it costs $10,000 a year. So if a shop pays that, they're not just going to lose that money, they're going to charge you for it. Each time you do something with your car, they have to charge you to kind of recoup those costs. It's another reason why we're kind of limiting the amount of makes and cars we're working on, because having 10 different scan tools with all these different modules and makes and modules and all these things going on, it is so expensive. It's crazy. I had to choose a section of cars to axe, and domestic cars did get the axe, unfortunately. But before we go, there's one last thing a lot of Teslas and a lot of newer EVs do, is over-the-air programming. You don't even need to plug in a tool like we just did. It's through the internet. Just like your cell phone has data, so does your car. You can plug in a new part, tell it to program, it goes over the air through the system and calibrates to that car. We're also seeing a lot of things, like I've mentioned in the past, subscription-based services. Your heated seats, your heated steering wheel. If you don't pay the monthly service charge, they will, from some office in New York somewhere, will push a button and turn off your heated seats permanently. It's a very weird situation. We're right on the cusp of seeing some major, huge automotive changes. That's the purpose why we did this video. What did it used to be? Kind of what it was 10 years ago, and where are we going from here? So that's basically why we're doing this. If you're curious what kind of tools we use in the shop, actually some of the scan tools we use in here are listed in the description below with Amazon. If you purchase anything there, we get a small cut and we really appreciate it. Also, all the hand tools we use in the shop are listed there as well. And hit the subscribe button here because there's so many more cars to come. And no, we haven't left you guys hanging with domestic videos. We're just not going to work on them for the public anymore. Thanks for watching.